join the race, buckle up and let it begin. Dave's got the knowledge, he's got the secret within. Tune in through the podcast, let your engine ignite. Racing facts unleashed, it's gonna be a wild ride.
Yes, thank you. I've just seen you in the background. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a Good Talk podcast. My name's David Whitehouse. I am your host here today. And as always, we will have a Wajid coming in, which if I press this button, like magic, he will turn up. There we go. Look at that. It's like magic. How are you all? How are you, Wajid?
I'm good. We've got it's a professional setting this year.
Yeah, we're getting there. Obviously, we're going to talk through the Grand Prix. I think if we hadn't known already who won, thank you, Will, for pointing that out. We are live on Twitch and YouTube, so feel free to pop in and give your opinions, your comments. We are going to... I'll just realise how far I'm off camera. There we go. We will get your comments in. We'll get your opinions in on the Grand Prix. We have loads of topics to talk about. We're going to try and keep it down below 2 hours, which is pretty good for us. Well, we should do. We actually plan these things these days. But yeah, first of all, the Miami Grand Prix sprint weekend. And the sprint was a bit of a bore. I've got to admit, I don't care what the commentators say. But the actual race was decent, even without the safety car, I'd say.
Bear in mind, we're measuring decent in terms of previous Miami Grand Prix. So,
yeah,
Miami,
I'm not talking Spa 98.
No, let's just put the caveat out there. For a Miami Grand Prix, it was a decent race. But yeah, I mean, I don't know why they brought the sprint format to Miami. I really think I've always said this whole American fascination, this American facade needs to stop. The showpiece of Miami and Las Vegas, that's what they are. But I think the race in Miami was good because we had a new winner. That's what sent it. That's what made it a better race. Because if Max had done what he normally does, which is a lights to lights finish, I don't think we'd be having the same conversation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it would be slightly different, but I do think the battle behind what Max was running, the Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, Piastri, Norris, would have been Hamilton with the pace he had as well. And yes, I did just say Lewis Hamilton had some pace. That's a Mercedes car moving. But yeah, so if you add it all together, that was going to be quite a good battle as it came around. But we have to start. And if you haven't seen the Grand Prix yet and you don't know the result and you don't want to know, 1, where have you been? 2, why are you watching a review show podcast? And 3, tough luck. Across the bottom, we will have the Grand Prix result. As you can see, scrolling on the bottom, Lando Norris won it from Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, Perez. Then we had Lewis Hamilton in 6th place, harrowing the back of Perez. Yuki Tsunoda scoring good points for RB again. George Russell in 8th, almost an enigma.
Sorry, did Sainz not get a 5-second penalty to finish?
Yes, yeah. So I've just realised that as well as I was scrolling it through. But yes, that is the result as they cross the line. Thank you, BBC, for letting me copy and paste that. But we will first of all head on to the main topic. Lando finally has shut up them social media trolls on whether he'll win a Grand Prix. And we all know what's going to happen now. It was the safety car. It was this. Will he ever win again? Will Piastri win more races than him? I don't care. He's a Grand Prix winner. And I've been critical of Lando. I have. I've sat there and gone, Lando, you don't defend. You try and fight things when the opportunity's not there. We look at Russia. I mean, this is the weird thing about it with Lando now. It's like a lot of people turn around and say, Lando hasn't won a Grand Prix. When's he going to win a Grand Prix? Why has Nick Heidfeld suddenly set a record in 2024? Yeah, because Lando finally won. But Lando hasn't had that many clear-cut opportunities to win a Grand Prix. I sit there and I think of Russia, and there's been a couple of times where his car might have been quicker, but things haven't gone his way. But there's not been, oh my God, Lando is leading this race. He should win this Grand Prix.
I mean, to be honest, I think the only other one I would add, and even then, team orders was applied was Monza 21 when they came home 1-2. Danny Rick says he had the pace and he was just driving us. We'll never know, but I think Russia, and Monza are the big two in my head that stick to mind with this sort of incarnation of the McLaren. But I think it's not helped Lando. I think Lando's cause hasn't been helped by the fact that, again, Danny Rick won in that car, even though for all intents and purposes it wasn't a good time. Ocon won in an Alpine. Gasly won in the or whatever. What was the car? The AlphaTauri.
It was the AlphaTauri at the time.
Yeah. So I also think having those guys win in the machines they did when the Mercedes, the Ferrari, and the Red Bull didn't win. I also think that hasn't helped Lando. I also think that hasn't helped Lando's cause. And then obviously, George Russell winning in Brazil in 22, I believe. So I think those things have compounded Lando's problems. But I mean, it was a bit daft to say he wasn't quick enough, or he'll never win a race and stuff. Because to be honest, out of the whole, the circle of friends group, he probably looks the quickest out of all three, to be perfectly honest. And from the order that came when they came into F2, where it was George Russell that had all the hype and stuff like that. To be perfectly honest, at this moment, it looks like it's Lando, Alex, then George out of that three about who's the most sort of complete driver, who's the most likely to win a world title if you were to give him a world title car.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you look at many other things, and this is one thing that struck me. You look at Pierre Gasly winning races, you look at Ocon winning races and whatever, and then social media explodes. Oh my God, a different car's won a race. This wasn't McLaren winning a race on social media. This was Lando winning a race. And the popularity of the guy, for a guy who, no disrespect, he's got more podiums without a win before this weekend than Nick Heidfeld. It's not like Nick Heidfeld suddenly had that popularity. What is it about Lando that it's not? I mean, we know he's got his female following. That's fair to say. But he also has a huge just fan base in general. Is it his accessibility with things like Twitch and streaming? Is it his looks that he still, even if he shaved, he would literally look like he was 12 years old? I don't know why it is with Lando, but there's something, there's like a bubble around him that, and it's not like he's got a sob story, no disrespect to his family, really rich, they're not poor people, but they're not billionaires or whatever. They're not Donald Trump. We'll get to that later. But he's not had it easy to come through, but then he's also had that backing always there. So it's not like there's a certain reason why everyone should love Lando Norris.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's his accessibility. He's the first one that's really used the whole YouTube, social media. He's brought in, big, fairly big sort of F1 YouTubers. He's yeah. He had, I think, because of his friendship with the Sidemen, he believe he had Vic Star at the McLaren launch at the start of the season. So I think because F1 drivers have always had that allure, haven't they, of not being accessible, keep themselves, miserable people away from the track and stuff like that. And to be honest, I think it's this current generation of F1 drivers are probably the most accessible. You go back to COVID with, Leclerc, Russell, Albon, Lando, all streaming against each other, stuff like that. Max was in there, and to be honest, I think he's the poster boy of it. But this is the most accessible we've ever had drivers, and also the drivers aren't afraid to say. The drivers aren't afraid to speak out against F1 anymore. Like Max saying in Vegas, this is a show. They're not afraid to say, yeah, we don't mind racing in Miami, as an example, but the track is crap. We don't like all the show. We don't like all the show that goes around it. We're just here to race. So I think all of that helps, and I just think Lando's the poster boy of that, really.
Yeah, and going on that fact of Miami, we didn't have the big announcement of each driver to walk through and get really confused about where they're going. Hey, Sergio Perez. We didn't have any meme-worthy material apart from Charles Leclerc having a towel on his head to try and keep himself cool.
They didn't drive into the Hard Rock Stadium for the trophy presentation. It was actually done trackside.
No, they did drive through. They had the little Jeep things.
Oh, did right? Okay.
Yes, they did. They had to walk to the stadium first. They didn't do it but what they did was, instead of driving all the way through the bottom and then having to walk up, they moved them up onto the top floors and drove them around the edge of the stadium that way.
Right.
It was definitely quicker than the first time they did it. Let's put it that way. And Lando in his almost promoting the Barbie movie with his pink little Jeep there. But yeah, like we say, hit the nail on the head with Lando. He's been there, done that. And we've got to also give a shout out, obviously, with the McLaren weekend to Oscar Piastri. Strong weekend. And we said both McLarens were there. But can we sort of say, yeah, Oscar maybe should have got a podium in the sprint, but in the race, he never really looked like getting more than, say, maybe jumping on to fourth place, maybe. He didn't really look like he was going to... I mean, he was second for a while, don't get me wrong, but it didn't look like it was going to work out for him in terms of the strategy.
When he came off the hard tires, the pace in his McLaren, the medium, and he went into the hards, his pace really, really seemed to die. Because on the mediums, he generally had the pace of both Ferraris until the tires started falling off. I don't know what happened with the hards, and we also have to say, McLaren did say he only had half the upgrades anyway. He's getting the rest of the upgrades in Imola, and I still think he did a very stellar job. To be honest, yeah, there's a lot to be said about his driving and his defending with Carlos towards the end of the race, and how it totally fell away and things like that. But I think now McLaren probably have the second best car given the upgrades, and we'll get to a certain team in black and silver and a team in green later who say oh well, you can't bring updates that jump your car forward as much as they do. Well, McLaren are a fine example because you and I this time last year had McLaren as potentially maybe finishing ninth in the constructors title,
Yeah.
given where they qualified and how bad that car was. What a difference a year makes.
Yeah, I think it was quoted as 1.5 second jump between the season before in Miami. Oh, sorry, they were about 1.5 seconds off pole. That was it. And then they obviously were challenging for pole this weekend. In terms of Oscar, I just think it just continued to show that period of a race that Oscar needs to improve. That tyre wear period, maybe come out of pits a little bit too slow. What I don't understand, and this is the most bizarre thing to me, because on the TV, completely blindingly obvious. The medium tyre this weekend was amazing for anybody to run. It would run, and it would run, and it would run. Lando did the fastest time in qualifying sprints completely on the medium tyre in SQ2. Then in the race, in the sprint, it was it the tyre to be on? Yes, it was. It was the tyre to be on in the sprint. Then they went to the race, and you could see from lap 1 or 2 that the warm up on the hard tyres was struggling. Lewis took his time to get into it, even though it did do a very good stint in terms of pace. Same with, I think it was Fernando who started on the hards as well.
Yeah, it was Fernando, Danny Rick, and Lewis that were on the hards.
Yeah, and Bottas who started on the softs. Obviously, he took a bump to the head before he left for the circuit in the morning and went, let's use a soft tyre. Nobody thought of doing that. But I think it even got to a stage with Lando that if that safety car hadn't come out, he would have just kept going and going and going. And then at some point, just gone and used a soft tyre.
Yeah,
even if it was on the final lap. Because I honestly think that medium tyre would have done the whole race at the pace it was going. And because Lando started slowly off and sort of sat back and then started to catch, I think it was Carlos and Leclerc and Piastri at the time. Perez as well.
But just cut you off. He was also very unlucky given Sergio Perez tried to do his best Valtteri Bottas Hungary incarnation as well. That's why he ended up further back. That's why he ended up behind everyone, because he had to avoid being a skittle again. So yeah, I will defend him slightly on that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to the sprint race start line incident, which caused a lot of controversy between people saying whether it was Lewis's, Lance's, Lando's, Fernando's, Mohammed bin Salam's fault. Who knows whose fault it was down into turn 1? There's lots of choices there. But yeah, just why Red Bull? I mean, we saw I can't remember her name, the Red Bull strategist on the pit wall.
Something Hannah Schmidt.
Hannah Schmidt. She was sitting there looking really concerned, and it was just like, this is probably one of the most easiest strategist call I've ever seen. Leave them on the mediums until you lose a little bit of pace, then go to the hards. Because nobody who went early to the hards gained pace. I think we had Nico Hulkenberg was an early one, and he was probably the most to gain from it. And he didn't even, I don't think he even gained points from it, did he, in the end? So it's, he was down outside the top 10. So just absolute madness why these strategists who have hundreds of computers could not call this, because it was right in front of your eyes.
But to be honest, to add to that, I also think Mercedes jumped the gun with pitting Lewis when they did it as well, though, because he was fairly comfortable on the hards and he pitted at the same time as the front runners did on the mediums. Those hards could have done another 5 or 10 laps. He had the heat in. His pace wasn't dropping. And as you say, like, this is obviously skipping ahead, but as you say, like, everyone was struggling to get the pace. Everyone was struggling to get the heat in the hard tires anyway. Even though Charles had pitted and come on the hards and overtaken him, Lewis was still maintaining a 2-second gap behind Charles at the time he was as well. So I know you say about the Red Bull, but I just think there was like strategic blunders like everywhere, all up and down the grid. To be honest, in terms of the tire strategy and pitting and things like that.
I actually think opposite to you. At the time, I do think Mercedes, when I saw them pitting them, I thought, I get it, safety car and all that. But then when you looked at it, I think it was about late 20s it was when the safety car come out.
Yeah,
And
20, 29, I believe. 29,
yeah, so Lando had been running them tyres for 29 laps. They only had another, 27 to go, 28 to go. It kind of made sense, actually. But if the safety car hadn't come out, they would have ran Lewis and ran him as long as they could. But actually, coming off and going on to that medium tyre that had a bit more pace, but then also had the longevity, made complete sense for Mercedes. But
no, they didn't pit Lewis during the safety car. They pitted him before the safety car. They pitted him 2 laps, but they pitted him 2 laps before the safety car.
Yes. Sorry.
That's why I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I got you there. Yeah. If they'd done it when the safety car come out, it would have been perfect strategy. You might be looking at a podium.
Yeah, that's why like that's if they'd done that, then I wouldn't have disagreed. But the whole point, I felt like the whole point of being on the hards for Fernando and Lewis was to wait for a safety car, and when you saw the mediums were running as far as they were, to pit them at the same time as the medium tire runners, there was nothing to gain from Mercedes.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah, I'm trying to think back through the race. It was a bit of a blur in the end, but as we said, Lando does it. He finally deserved it. Had to be driver of the day because he had to. It wasn't like a dominant victory from front. He had to fight for it. He was down in 6th, I think, after the start. So Lando does it. But then we're going to move on to a topic which we were going to talk about last week, and then this eye here decided to flare up like something crazy, and I couldn't see out of it. So a bit like Red Bull, I couldn't see out of that. Red Bull couldn't see the future. They fall apart, literally. We had the announcement. We'll very quickly go through this one. We had the announcement that Adrian Newey was going to leave Red Bull in the first quarter of 2025. And the first thing that struck me with this seems to have struck everybody in the paddock. Christian Horner, Jonathan Wheatley, Helmut Marko have got the best designer in the world. He wants to leave. So let's allow him time to get. Remember, 2026 is regulations. You cannot build or design anything till 2025. They're releasing him in the first quarter of 2025 with 0 gardening leave. Talking about people hitting their heads before they went into a meeting. What were they thinking?
Well, from the sounds of it, if you speak to sort of the F1 insiders, Christian Horner loves downplaying how much effect Adrian Newey's had on the ground effect cars, and he wants to give it to the actual design director and the powertrains director, whose names are totally escaping me at the time. So I do apologize, but I genuinely think it's a case of Red Bull have got to the point, or the Red Bull organization, the team leaders, have got to the point where they believe so much about, Adrian Newey's not really had the effect on the car, because they've said it so much, they actually believe what they say. Hence why they're going, we'll be totally fine. But when you have your three-time world champion, 3-time back-to-back world champion coming out and saying, I'd have liked Mr. Newey to stay around for the new regulations, you might have a slight problem, guys.
Yeah, I mean, for me, we look at Adrian Newey, we look at his history. Obviously, it's either been fast or fragile. That's the way it's been for his cars, and most of the time they are fast and reliable as well. But in terms of like the whole situation of gardening leave, I mean, he's 65 now, 66 next year. If you gave him his gardening leave, he's 67, 68 before he's actually got influence on a car. But you're still, I mean, there's people who have left Red Bull to go to other teams and they've had to have gardening leave. There's people who have gone from Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes to Red Bull, to Aston Martin. You know, there's loads of mechanics we see will swap teams as we go around. I've got friends from other paddocks who have been in Alpine, Mercedes, over Aston Martin. All three of them over the last few years. One was Red Bull, Toro Rosso to Alpine, RB, whatever you want to call it beforehand. So these mechanics swap around all the time, and they may have to have a little bit of gardening leave of some kind, whether it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. We're talking about the guy who literally designed your car on a sheet of paper. He will roll up his sheets of paper and take them with him at the end of the day, and maybe draw a little cartoon in the corner. Who knows? But it's
put a signature in the bottom corner.
I just don't get how you've got somebody so influential in Formula One and he doesn't need gardening leave. I know he's getting on and you want him to be able to do what he wants to do. And it's probably a respect thing as well. You know, you've brought us all this success.
I don't think so.
Us.
I don't think so.
You know,
sorry, no. I think that man knows something in that organization that he's used as leverage to get rid of his gardening leave. Because I work
one more at you.
Yeah, go on.
Because we've also got rumours now that Jonathan Wheatley's thinking of leaving. Now, obviously, we've had all the Christian Horner stuff, which we thought we'd left behind, but it's left a sour taste. And you've got a lot of power influence in that team. You've got the Verstappens, you've got the Thai Red Bulls. Is it Thai or Singaporean? Thai, I think.
I believe they're Thai, but apologies if we are wrong.
You've got Helmut Marko's side of things, Wheatley, Horner. You know, that's 5 before we start. Adrian Newey. Now, a lot of people would turn around and say Adrian Newey doesn't have any power. He's just a designer. When he was at Williams, he wanted on the board, and Patrick Head and Frank Williams were going to give it to him and didn't. And that was part of the reason he left in 1996. In McLaren, I fully believe he wanted on the board there, but you had Martin Whitmarsh and Ron Dennis having their power struggles. So there's a very familiar similarity here of, I mean, I know Martin Whitmarsh and Ron Dennis didn't leave till like 2007, 2008, 2009 onwards, but those power struggles probably started back in 2005. But yeah, it's a weird one. I wonder whether Adrian's gone along and gone, I don't like this power struggle again. I don't want all this. We'll walk away. And people like Jonathan Wheatley, Christian Horner, we may leave Red Bull. Now, if we leave Red Bull, we want to go elsewhere. And we want Adrian Newey coming with us. And if he's on gardening leave, can we change that? And there's probably, they can't change the gardening leave at that stage. So if we give him no gardening leave and he goes and signs for a team that we're going to, happy days.
I agree. I agree with a fair amount of what you say, but I'm speaking from sort of my experience in sort of senior management within financial slash banking sector, and you know, to say like there are dirty tactics that happen all the time in terms of people cutting the gardening leave and things like that. When you are pretty much like considered the sort of greatest engineer or greatest aerodynamic engineer that the sport has ever seen, the man, I believe the man's won like, I think is it 18 or 20 constructors titles in it since his time in Formula One. he had a contract till 2026. In any organization, when you want to cut your contract early and join a rival organization, 9 times out of 10 they say, yeah, that's fine. You could cut the contract, but you see that gardening leave and the rest of the contract that you've got left on your terms. You're running that down. You're not joining anyone. Yeah, we'll pay you your gardening leave because that's what gardening leave is. But you are not joining anyone. That's how it works. It's business. Business is business, and especially in the most lucrative sport in the world, with Formula One, with the money that gets thrown around and the sponsorship and things like that. Christian Horner, this isn't a respect thing. This isn't a he can work on a different project and we want him the best in his future endeavors. That stuff doesn't exist that stuff does not exist in sport. That stuff does not exist when it comes to the level of money these guys are speaking about. Adrian Newey knows something within that organization that he is not happy about. He's not happy. I don't think he's happy with how the investigation was conducted with Christian Horner. I don't think he's happy with how everything was swept under the rug. Like, well, it's one of those things. I also believe he isn't happy with the level of disrespect he's getting for the help he's given Red Bull with sort of the end period of the V8s and now into the ground effect cars. I believe it's a mixture. I believe it's a mixture of things, and fair play to Eddie Jordan, his manager, who's managed to get the gardening leave cut. Fair play to. There's a lot that can be said about Eddie Jordan, and he would be the first person to tell you what he's done in F1. But fair play in this regards, and I genuinely believe there's information within that organization that he knows that he said, look, this is the sketch. Just cut my gardening leave, let me go, and they've gone. I think he signed a nice NDA and gone, okay, cool, on your way. There's tit for tat. He's not. They've not gone, oh well, we're happy with everything you've done. Thank you very much. We'll cut your gardening leave. And he's not gone, oh well, guys, if you don't mind, none of that. Don't worry, I won't join Ferrari. I won't join Aston Martin. Like, if you just let me go, I won't be in Formula One. None of that's happened. Sorry,
that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. And Nick popping in on the chat, rumours Adrian Newey's off to Ferrari. I was about to get onto the rumours. Now, the rumours have been Ferrari, Mercedes, obviously. Every team is talking to him, but there's two main rumours that sort of took off. The first one being Aston Martin, which has obviously been denied, which I can kind of understand. I don't see why you'd want to go to Aston Martin. They're building their own little team over there, and Lance Stroll owns that team, and it won't be Aston Martin forever. So if you go 3-4 years down the line, is it still going to be Aston Martin and Lance Stroll? Possibly not. Do you want to take that risk? So with Adrian Newey, he's worked for Leighton House, independent team. Williams, independent team, Evo Works Renault engine. McLaren, independent team with a Works Mercedes engine. Red Bull, which initially wasn't Works team, but obviously become Works Honda, and pretty much Works Renault at one point, even though Renault will deny it, and Christian Horner will say there's never Renault in the back of his car. But he's never worked for a team who literally build the engine around the car, or the car around the engine. And like Enzo Ferrari always said, I build an engine and I put some wheels on it. That's what I do. So we're in a situation now where he could go to Ferrari, but the big rumor that's come up recently is that he is in talks with James Vowles at Williams. Now, what a story this would be if he went back to Williams and brought them back from the brink. I think a lot of people would say, how can Williams afford this? Budget caps and everything. But we've already seen from Red Bull, you don't have to put Adrian Newey on the right payroll for it to come under the budget cap. So are Williams now sitting there going, hang on a minute, this could be a clever move, and we can bring in a paid driver in the background. I'm not talking Logan Sargent. I'm talking somebody with even more backing, and we can talk that one over. Nick also brings up the way that Lewis was talking over the weekend, which did seem to bring up a lot of suggestions, but whether that was Lewis playing the game, I'm not too sure. So Williams, Ferrari, he could retire. He could retire. We he might have got fed up with a lot and he's going to walk away. He's going to finish the Valkyrie project at Red Bull, but Wajid, where do you see him ending up if he ends up with a team?
There's only two reasons he ends up at Williams. One, to finish the story he started where he built his name, and two, he doesn't want to go to Maranello once every couple of weeks because he enjoys being at home and the time and the sort of freedom he got. For me, those would be the only two reasons he does not join the team in red, because he has openly talked about how he has never worked hand in hand with like an established world champion. He goes, he's always wanted to work with a Fernando or Lewis. I don't believe he's going to go to Aston, given the Stroll sort of fingerprints everywhere. I do believe it is between the Williams and Ferrari. Does the whole Adrian Newey, Lewis, Charles, Freddie Vasseur dominant Ferrari period as a Formula One fan, does it go? Yeah, it'd be nice to see the boys in red back at the front. Absolutely. But I think it's between those two. And to be perfectly honest, given how people have described sort of Adrian Newey's situation with Red Bull, with him not having to go in the office, working remotely, being at home, I think, finishing the story at Williams, where I don't think it'll be as stressful for him, to be perfectly honest, because there's no expectation at Williams. They don't expect to be challenging for a world title or anything like that. So if he wants to finish his career off in a relaxed way, then I think Williams is the best place for him.
Yeah, I with the Williams story, I do think it could be very much because it's open to not takeovers, but open to people coming to the board. And that's what Adrian's always wanted. He's always wanted a bit of control inside the team. So maybe that's something that could entice him across to Williams. But if he doesn't go to Williams and he goes to Ferrari, I don't think we're talking about the last kind of British engineers we've seen going over there. We've seen Rob Smedley, John Barnard was a designer who went across there, which didn't work because John wanted to work in the UK and live in the UK, and they actually Fry built an office for him. They sorted him an office in the UK, but obviously because you're not doing it from the Maranello plant, it just didn't work. It wouldn't combine together. Now, if you're telling Adrian Newey with a budget cap, let's stick the budget cap in, that you're probably going to need a 4-month holiday over in Maranello in the north of Italy with the lakes, etc., for 4 months over winter, and then from May onwards you can live back in the UK until you need to come back and design next year's car. I mean, it's an enticing prospect, but we know Adrian, he is a guy who throws himself into everything. So I
also think that's an enticing prospect for someone in their late 20s, early 30s, who young in their career, trying to establish the name. When you're at 67, 68 retirement age, you've done it all. You've been around the world. You've been in Formula One for the last 30 years. You want to enjoy time with your family, your wife. You like your setup. I also, I mean, not to be rude or anything, but I also think where you are at the stage of your career and your relevant age and stuff like that, I also think, and how long you've been in a sport, I also think a lot of that gets played into it. The only thing Ferrari have over Williams is if they say to Adrian, here are the plans for a couple of our Ferraris. Would you like to make a couple of Adrian Newey special edition Ferraris? That is the only thing that, if Adrian is wanting to work on different projects, stamping an Adrian Newey designed Ferrari, regardless of anything, a Ferrari is a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Having that, yeah, cool. You got the Valkyrie project with Red Bull, that's brilliant. It's still a Red Bull. Adrian Newey designed Ferrari. It just hits differently, doesn't it? Like it sounds different. It hits different.
You have got to remember that Adrian does have a bit of history with Ferrari, going to Le Mans and racing a Ferrari GT3 back at Le Mans back in 2007, I think it was. He finished fourth in class. So if you go to Ferrari, you're not just probably working on the F1 car. You could be working, as Wajid said, on road cars. You could be working on the hypercar for Le Mans. Ferrari have always sort of tampered with the idea of going to IndyCar. Now, obviously, that's normally a one chassis job, but you can add your things to it. So it'd be quite interesting to see whether Newey could go across to Ferrari and adapt the whole thing. But that is possibly for another day, because that's Adrian Newey, and he's leaving. He's going to keep quiet for a while, so all we can do is speculate. But I would say, like we've already said, Williams or Ferrari will be where he ends up, unless a certain little American team get in, because they've just built a base in Silverstone.
No.
Maybe. But
I don't think so. I mean, personally, I don't think so.
Yeah. It would be one thing to bring a car straight from the bottom. That would really do. And maybe the first American-based car winner for a long time.
It would, but I just believe that who wants a project like that? I think he wants to. I think he either wants to. I think he'd either want to bring Williams back to glory, given what he did with them in 94, 95, 96, 97, or bring the Scarlet Red and the Tifosi back to the front. I think the whole American project is just, it's a long-term project. I just don't think he can be bothered.
Yeah, Nick's just brought up a point about Lewis leaving Mercedes, which we'll get to in a little bit, because actually that is something which we can bring up with the Mercedes side of things. Going back to Miami, Red Bull seemed to have pace, seemed to be dominant again. And then Colin McCone got in the way, and Max Verstappen decided Colin was not going to stand there anymore, and rip Colin McCone. If you want to hashtag that, feel free. We have done plenty of times in karting as well. They said it was 0.2 of a second of damage done. We've watched the replay of him coming down and hitting where the cone was plugged into. There's some damage of some kind, whether that's the plug or the car. Not sure, but it's carbon fiber. There's going to be something slightly different, and we know how delicate these cars are to little pieces of damage. But 0.2 of a second doesn't mean that Max Verstappen would have gone and won that race. Without the safety car, are we talking a Lando win, or are we just talking another Max Verstappen dominance?
Talking Max Verstappen dominance. The safety car was timed at the perfect. The safety car was timed at the perfect time. You could see, cool. The Mercedes of Lewis. I mean, it's not quick at all. Let's be honest, but you could see he was getting to within 3-4 tenths of Checo, but because of the speed of that Red Bull, he wasn't getting anywhere around him. I doubt the McLarens were that much quicker. We also know Max in a fight does not care, and I don't think he'd have cared if it was Lando, if it was Charles, if it was a reincarnation of Ayrton Senna. He would have fought tooth and nail. No one wants to talk about the safety car No one wants to talk about the safety car blunder of the safety car picking up Max and letting Lando drive 35 seconds after the distance before he went, the Red Bull's not leading the race. Whoops. Go on, guys. So no one wants to talk about that either, probably because it didn't have an overall bearing, but this was lights to fly. This was going to be lights to lights for Max.
Yeah. Going on with safety car blunder, while I agree, I think in terms of, and this is one of the first times I'm going to say FIA were thinking about safety, in terms of getting the safety car out and where the crash happened, which we have to thank K-Mag for some action yet again, or maybe Logan Sargent, who knows, both being critical this weekend of both them drivers, but where the crash happened, you had to get the car slowed down as quickly as possible. And it just happened that by the time the safety car had accelerated out of pit lane, Lando was coming past. And I think McLaren probably knew that Lando was going to get past the safety car and that he would obviously pick up. And behind the safety car, they are slightly slower than the Delta. And I think if the safety car could have done, he probably would have let everybody go a lot sooner to pick up Lando. But the problem was, where the crash happened, he wouldn't have any chance of re-picking up the whole pack before they passed the safety situation. So with marshals, tractors and drivers out on track, you would have had to say, right, nobody goes out on track, doesn't clean up the mess. We're going to have loads of pit stops before everybody's picked up the safety car queue. And at the end of the day, this is going to take longer to clear up as a whole situation. So we pick up the first car going, which turned out to be Max Verstappen. I think Bert Maylander may have just actually gone, we've got to pick up the leader. Hey, all right, Max. Common, just almost like automatic. It's going to be a Red Bull and it's going to be Max Verstappen. But I do think on the safety side of things, they did it the right way, because there's no way. Because we all know if Lando had pitted that second lap and all the cars had been gone, they would have been trying to floor it through there, because the safety car 2 line on pit exit was just before the accident. So everybody would have been, because between safety car 1 and 2, you can floor it. As long as the accident isn't there. And then you would have had a load of cars backing each other up right on safety car 2, possibly causing another accident. So that's the way I kind of looked at that one.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. I see that. It's just because on commentary, obviously, the Sky did have hardcore British bias going with them wanting Lando to win, which is fair enough. But if given the gap that was causing things, if the McLaren team had another set of medium tires, because the medium tire was the tire to be on, with that 30-second gap, he could have gone in, pitted on the hards, done an entire lap and gone, right, I want to stick the mediums back on. And I think if that safety car is 4 laps later, he does that. And then this conversation is a totally different conversation of, well, the safety car's given Lando a 30-second gap and he's allowed to pit twice. And right, I'm playing. No, I'm not down. I don't want this to be like I'm downplaying Lando, because I've said, Lando and the McLaren team were the best team and the best driver this weekend. But then we're having a totally different conversation again, aren't we? About well, they picked up the wrong driver. The guys managed to make effectively 2 free pit stops, and he's now on the best set of tires, not really run the hards. And everyone would play. Oh well, it's strategic genius. I mean, it's not. It would have been a blunder.
Yeah,
That's where my opinion was coming from.
yeah, I get that, but then also, I suppose if you watch IndyCar many times, this has happened 100 million times in the time of IndyCar. So, Max, still a very good weekend. You lose.
I mean, he still ended up with the most points this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, with Lando, with Red Bull, I sort of think of this weekend as a Mercedes Singapore weekend. You've got a dominant car, the pace isn't quite there, you're still near the front, and you didn't quite get the win. I think that's where we stand on that. As down below, we will have the championship points coming up. So if you'd missed the Grand Prix result, where have you been for the last 50 minutes? It is now the Drivers' Championship points updated. In terms of Sergio Perez, lucky boy, because you were almost relegated to the Red Bull Junior team. Wow. You've got to say, considering what happened in the sprint race, the words to Sergio Perez would have been, be careful.
He was a very, very lucky boy this weekend.
I can't believe that afterwards, Max didn't even know what happened, saw it, and then all of a sudden in his press conferences, he's saying, I may have got a scratch on my rear diffuser. I'm sorry, the speed Sergio Perez was coming in, you would not have got a scratch. You would have been demolished into the next century.
He had no idea. He had no idea what happened. I mean, it was the thing is, it was genuinely a really bad weekend for Checo Perez because in the sprint race, he was looking at the back of that RB of Daniel Ricciardo's longer than he should have done anyway. Nick just says it's gone to a point where I don't even bother looking at first. I look and get more excited from second now. I think that's all of us made, to be perfect. Then. But yeah,
well, Lando never won. Verstappen won if you looked at that. So that backfired this weekend.
But Checo's looking at the back of that RB longer than he should have done in the sprint race.
Yes.
And then, I mean, not only did he nearly take out Max, he would have taken out both Ferraris and Lando at the same time. So, to be honest, if that happened, I mean, then it really would have been a free for all about who would have won the Miami GP, wouldn't it? But Checo Perez is a very, very, very lucky boy, and we said this all last year. It's going to be again the same again this year. Who's taking that seat in 2025? Because I don't think anyone believes Checo Perez is going to be in that seat much longer. And somehow he's second in the world drivers' title, which I think is more about the car than anything Checo's done this season because he's been nowhere.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, we had a lot of praise for him from the sprint race because his pace was very good near the end of the sprint race, but it didn't seem to help him in the race. But we spoke about safety car blunders, and we should really move on from Red Bull.
Sorry, just quickly,
what?
we've had three different race winners this year, and Checo Perez isn't one of them. Says a lot, to be honest, about his current form.
I will also say that out of 3 races that Verstappen hasn't won, Red Bull hasn't won in the last 3 years, 2 of them have been Brits. But yeah, we'll gloss past that one. So Red Bull fell apart. They'll be back next time in Imola, probably dominant as always. But next up is a topic which we quite enjoy. On this channel, we spoke about this many times. We're going to try and stick it just to Miami because there's enough talking points. But you mentioned the commentators earlier, Wajid, about how they were discussing things. And I've got to say, I feel like they were on a bit of a mission to stir the pot this weekend because you look at the first corner, constantly thinking it was Lewis's fault. You look at the K-Mag in the sprint race going, oh, it's just hard racing. Well, hang on, Lewis has just done exactly the same thing down into turn 1. Then you go on to the feature race. bloody
Call it
F2 now.
the
We'll call it the
P2
Grand Prix. There we go. And you've got Sergio almost doing worse than what Hamilton did, to be fair. But then you've got the safety car decision. Then you've got Oscar and Carlos, where Oscar is literally forcing a driver off the track. Whereas it's hard racing, but then Carlos makes one little step out under braking, which breaks Oscar's wing, which I still fully believe Oscar could have carried on, but McLaren knew if they pitted him, guaranteed penalty for sights. You've got Alonso, who is sitting there going, it's all Lewis's fault, whatever happened. Oh, hang on, Lance turned into me. No, it's still Lewis's fault. And then saying, well, it's because we're Spaniards. But then in literally the next hour after Alonso said that, or the next day, they give Carlos Sainz a penalty from Spain and not other drivers. It's just nothing this weekend made sense.
I also want to add on the British Sky F1 commentary, the K-Mag thing. Half his car was there. They were making out like K-Mag shouldn't be there. Logan Sargent wasn't expecting an overtake. There was half a Haas there.
Yeah.
So
I just don't get the decisions because I mean I've sat there. I've been on both sides in go-karting. I've raced and I've officialed. And you do get different views, but we're not talking about a one-time view. Like for me standing there, watching a kart race, trying to make a decision, I have that one-time view, got to make a decision there and then. So you have to be really accurate. Whereas these have got cameras, replays, decisions, multiple people behind them making the same decision to try and make it a fair jury. And I've got to be honest, I love Martin Brundle as a commentator and an analyst in terms of Crofty. You know, he splits opinions. That's absolutely fine because commentators do that. But they got very opinionated on things this weekend, which is one rule as a commentator. You don't make decisions. You could go, oh, I think that might be a penalty, but it's down to the stewards to decide. Whereas this weekend they were very, no, this is the way it should be. And I just halfway through that race, they must have, the drivers must have been going, well, we don't know what's allowed and what's not.
There seemed to be, I don't know, there seemed to be blatant favourites in commentary. There seemed to be blatant, some people were blatant favourites in commentary this week. I mean, I tweeted, they were saying K-Mag was hard racing. The Sky F1 team of Danica Patrick, which the less said about Danica Patrick this weekend, the better. Jensen and is it Simon Lazenby? They were going, oh yeah, it's great hard racing by K-Mag. It was all, and then K-Mag came on. Then K-Mag had an interview. He goes, yeah, I fully deserve all the penalties. I drove like an ass. And then all the Sky F1 team will look. All the Sky F1 team just looked like a bunch of morons, didn't they? Yeah. Oh, it's all hard. It's all hard racing. You know, the penalties are a bit harsh. For the driver to come out and say, yeah, I absolutely drove over the line to help the team, and I've apologized to Lewis. What are you doing? What are we doing?
It's a problem we have with the Liberty Media style of Formula One we have today. And I'm going to say that I'm going to be as clear as day, and we're not getting paddock passes, let's put it that way. So it doesn't really matter. Liberty Media have built a Formula One, I'll say American style, and if there's American viewers, you'll know what I mean. And I don't mean this offensively to America, but it's action, it's entertainment, it's got to have some kind of grit behind it. You've got to have a story. And they want to see hard racing now. I've got no problem with hard racing. And I would stand next to K-Mag and put my arm around him and go, you're absolutely right. You bang on. And I can't, it's amazing that he came out and said that. He didn't just go, oh, I'm trying to race hard or anything like that. But this weekend, literally, in terms of the decisions made, which we're going to try and very quickly fire through every single one I can think of and give our very short opinion on, or we'll be here all day because there's that many of them. K-Mag came out and literally said, alongside Max Verstappen, who said it about a different thing, in terms of racing, there's got to be a line at some point. And K-Mag admitted he went across the line. But it honestly felt like they normally in racing, you can sit there and you can go, right, my mother hasn't got balls, she's my mother. My mother's got balls, she's my father. Just taken from Max Verstappen. But you couldn't this weekend. You literally couldn't. None of these decisions could be taken. You were looking at each one going, what are you, like the only one which was 100% yes was Ocon pulling out into pit lane because his mechanics literally saying, don't pull out, bang straight into Charles Leclerc before the sprint race, and Lewis's speeding penalty in the pits. Nothing else was a guaranteed thing. The rest was opinion.
That's right, and Max speeding in the pits as well in the sprint.
Did Max speed in the pits?
Yeah, he was fine. He was fine.
Oh yeah, because it was like 0.9 of a mile an hour or something.
Yeah, something similar. But I mean, let's go over the like-for-like comparisons. K-Mag drives Lewis off the road at 10-11 in the sprint race. He got slapped with a penalty. Oscar Piastri did the exact same to Carlos Sainz after the safety car. Carry on its hard racing.
Yeah.
And then going further ahead, can Carlos Sainz with the front and the Oscar Piastri incident. If Oscar can drive Carlos off the road, and Carlos is next to front wing of Oscar Piastri. Bear in mind, I also want to add, I also think the reason they pitted Oscar Piastri, the reason McLaren pitted Oscar, they didn't want Oscar's front wing, and they didn't want debris falling on the track to cause a safety car.
Yeah,
I also think that as well. But why did that need investigating after the race though? There was still 17 laps.
Yeah.
Why? If it's a penalty, you were slapping penalties left, right, and centre for everything else.
That was something with Lewis. When was the safety car in the sprint race? It was after lap one. It was on lap one. And when did he get speed in the pits? End of lap one. But when did he get his penalty?
After the race.
End of the sprint race. Yeah. Now, Martin Brundle's always said this. Speeding penalties, jump starts. If you're investigating for them, it's normally slam dunk. It is normally bang on slam dunk. Because you've got some kind of information that tells them this. So why can't you just give the penalty?
But why do I feel like with Carlos, forget Lewis, but especially with Carlos, why do I feel like they finished the race result and then judged a penalty where it was he got given the 5 seconds or whatever, but it wasn't harsh, but they judged it based on, okay, he'll only drop one spot, not 2 or 3 spots.
Yeah. Well, yeah, go on.
Because everything else, 10 seconds was getting thrown around like an Oprah show. You get 10, you get 10, you get 10. So where was the difference between the 5 and the 10?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to literally, over the instance I can remember, I'm going to throw each one at you. I'll give my opinion on who was at fault, whether there should have been a penalty. And remember, guys and girls watching, it doesn't have to be a penalty. We can sit on the fence and say it was a racing incident. We are allowed splinters in our arse. So, we're going to start before the first sprint race. Very easy one. Ocon leaving the pit box and breaking his front wing against Charles Leclerc. I think slam down penalty.
Yeah, penalty.
Easy. See, Who needs the FIA? We can do this. Start of a sprint race. Now, no penalty was given. It was a racing and a racing incident. Lando ended up retiring. Zach Brown obviously didn't agree with that. What a stupid question to ask. His car's out of the race. Lance and Alonso came together, and then Lewis came up the inside, and obviously contact was made as well there. A lot of blame went on to Lewis Hamilton. My version of it, I honestly think, yes, Lewis went in a bit hard, but if Lance hadn't turned in on Alonso, and Alonso, let's go back to China, Lance wasn't watching where he's going under safety car, looking at the apex, and he ran into Daniel Ricciardo. Alonso, by the time he looked forward and stopped looking in his mirror and his apex, he was already into Lance Stroll.
So, yeah.
So, in my opinion, you've got to be looking at the Aston Martins. Stuff Lewis. He actually was, he locked a brake and ended up running into the side of him. But at that point, he didn't do anything wrong.
And they always say you always give extra leeway on lap one of the race start because you don't know what happens. I mean, that I'm not saying that's my opinion. That's the general consensus. That's always been there. And did Lewis make contact? Yeah, absolutely. But did he cause the accident? No, because like you say, the Astons were already kissing each other anyway. And the innocent party and all that is Lando. But if you actually look at the screen, grab, and if you look at the screenshot, you've got 3 cars in the corner here trying to make the apex. Lando is in the middle of no man's land. The impact by Lewis hasn't caused. The impact by Lewis wasn't so much that all 3 cars came skittling across. If you watch it, Lance is driven into Alonso. Lance is then correcting the right. Lewis has then joined the Astons feeling left out, but Lance was already moving his steering wheel away from everyone because he knew he'd already hit Alonso anyway, but he's moved it so much he's gone straight into Lance into Lando. If anything, the Astons caused the damage, but it's borderline racing incident / Lance Stroll's fault.
And we'll also throw out there, obviously, because of this incident and the penalties that given out, Alonso said, they're not getting penalties because they're not Spanish. Who was given back a time penalty so he could have a podium in Saudi Arabia? Apparently, a Spaniard called Fernando Alonso, and I don't mean the journalist. Okay, so that was the next one. Then we had the 2 Alpines racing side by side. That was fine. Nothing happened. They both fancied taking each other out. Absolutely fine. The safety car overtook them at some point in that race because they were so slow. We had the main one from the sprint race, K-Mag and Lewis. Now, we got told the sprint race was amazing. No, it wasn't. We're talking about a battle for 1 point, which you want to take away that battle by giving everybody points. Work that one out. But Lewis, few times tried to get around K-Mag, couldn't quite, got pushed out wide. There's once where K-Mag was the one who got pushed out wide and he rejoined into the side of Lewis. I think it was 3 penalties that K-Mag got during that race, 2 10 seconds and a 5 second.
And a 5 second.
Weirdly enough, the 10 second was for cutting the chicane because that was the first one he got. So he must have got a 10 second for cutting the chicane, which I didn't even think was an option. I thought it was 5 seconds for cutting a corner and gaining an advantage, which ironically happened just after he lost DRS because Nico Hülkenberg, his teammate, cut the chicane and dropped him out of the DRS zone. So isn't that gaining an advantage?
Don't apply logic. That's something that requires more logic.
So in the whole scheme of things, Nico Hülkenberg should have got a 10-second penalty as well. which would have been a very. Let me just have a look at the sprint race result in full, so that I can just see if a 10-second penalty had been applied to Nico Hulkenberg. Pierre
I think he
Gasly
did.
would have got
I
a
think he
point.
did finish. Yeah, I think he did finish ninth.
No, actually, 10 seconds, 32. Yeah, he would have gone behind Pierre Gasly and just ahead of Logan. Yes, he would have done so. So that was that situation. But he didn't get one. K-Mag did, because he's flavour of the month and got his own seat in the steward's room. For me, this isn't K-Mag's fault. Now, there's a difference, a huge difference between what he did in Saudi Arabia and what he did here. What he did in Saudi Arabia was absolutely fair game. He slowed down in the slow stuff. He sped up in the quick stuff. It's allowed. He didn't force anybody off the track. He wasn't forcing anybody wide. But if you do want fair racing, why at turn... I'm going to have to count turns now.
11.
Is it turn 11 at the end of the back straight?
Yes, 10, 11.
If you want to allow that racing, which I don't mind if you want to. Am I occasionally freezing? I'm sorry, Nick. I think it's my Wi-Fi connection. So apologies if I am. Why, in any terms of the matter, is there a white line there?
Because it's a showpiece. It's
But
theirs,
if you take
it is artistic license to have the white line there. What are you complaining about?
Well, I suppose it allowed room for a sponsor to go just off the track. But if you've got this problem of people going off the track there, but you want them to race, let's change it. Let's make it so you then go to either put the wall forward, so you can't do that. So like anywhere else on the circuit, or you then move the white line back and allow them to have a even quicker turn 11 where overtakes won't happen because people will be able to take so much speed into that corner.
Bear in mind, also just to add with the turn 11, because of how the wall comes so quickly for turn 12, it's always dangerous re-entry anyway when you drive off the track because they have to drive into the side of the car that's overtaking them anyway. I've always been a proponent of just bring back gravel traps, or stop this artificial track / extending the tarmac all the way out because it's just bull.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Right. The reason why in Austria it makes total in Austria having that runway makes total, when they have the small runway, makes total sense for the end of turn 4. But that used to be gravel as well. Have you seen why at the hairpin at the bottom of I'm getting my turn 3. Have you seen why at the bottom of the hairpin at the end of turn 4 in Austria why you don't have cars running around the outside or taking the risk around the outside a la Albon? It's because there's a massive gravel trap there, and if the car ends up on the gravel trap, they know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
right.
No, I completely agree. And
so I'm totally with you. Like, K-Mag should have got the penalties. To be perfectly honest, given K-Mag's driving standards, he should have been disqualified.
Yes,
it got borderline. It got borderline dangerous at some points. It was just ridiculous.
And that's where the FIA have allowed it to happen. Not because of Saudi Arabia or anything like that, but they allowed that to happen. They didn't say, come on. But the weird thing is, a 5-10 second penalty isn't a distraction anymore. Because if you're not going to score points from 5 seconds, then you don't score 5 points. That's the end. Long and short of it.
And K-Mag knew he wasn't scoring points. K-Mag openly knew he wasn't scoring points this weekend. He said, I did it for the team. He knew as soon as he lost Nico Hulkenberg's DRS, he knew he wasn't scoring points. So when you know in a sprint race, what's the difference between 9th and 20th? Absolutely nothing. It's still the same result. It's still the same result regardless. So he should have been disqualified. He should have been disqualified. And now it's getting to. And the thing is, now it's getting to the point where why are some drivers judged harsher than other drivers? Why is it if a driver is driving against another driver, the penalty is different comparison to the driver? It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. But let's quickly move on to all the penalties in the race quickly, because it's already when we go through when we try to quick fire something, it's still not a quick fire.
No, exactly. Sorry if my camera is stalling a little bit. For some reason, my Wi-Fi is moaning at me. But I'll get that sorted for the next podcast we do. What we got next? First corner, Perez didn't hit anybody. Who cares? Get on with it. We'll go with the next one, which was Magnussen Sargent.
That's a racing incident.
I get a racing incident, but I also understand with the experience of Kevin Magnussen, he would have known that door was going to shut. So I get he kind of expected Logan to back out of that. So okay, Nick, I'll try and get that sorted for next time. I personally think K-Mag knew that door was going to shut, and it was kind of like a good way to get out of the car nice and early for his early flight, probably.
There's half a hash there.
He was already in the steward's room for the day before, so he had a long meeting to have.
He might
might miss his flight if he got to the end of the race.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't care anymore. I think it's a racing incident. I think that's just K-Mag driven like an absolute arsehole all weekend, and they just went, you know what? You've already driven like a geriatric trying to put on a Sunday. So you might as well add this to everything else.
Yeah. I don't think there's a penalty for K-Mag. Oh yeah, there was, but it was after he carried on, didn't he? So he actually managed to carry on in that situation.
He got another 10 seconds slapped on.
Yeah, where this 10 seconds suddenly come from, I don't know. I mean, it used to be for the worst of incidents, and now you click apply and you get a 10-second penalty.
Bring back stop and go. Honestly, bring back stop and go. You really want to really want to punish these drivers. Bring back stop go penalties.
And on top of that, don't allow them in a pit stop.
Yeah.
Let's take, if you want to do a pit stop, that's fine, but you go to a specified box like they used to do, where the FIA time it, and you get your 10-second penalty timed by an FIA instructor who goes, you're done. Now, if you want to pit that time you in the pit lane, I'll allow that. That's not bad, but you have to then move to your box. But you have your own specified box where the scales are for qualifying, and you pull in there, and you have a 10-second penalty.
Yeah, absolutely.
I used to do it.
Yeah, I don't. But the thing that's what I don't understand why we stop. You want to really punish these drivers with really bad driving. Bring back stop go penalties.
I will tell you why.
Bring back drive through penalties.
Because they've always wanted this situation where they have as many cars on track as possible, as many people racing as possible, as many people. If a grid falls down to 6 people left on the track, it's bad racing. No. Everybody remembers Monaco 96. 3 people finished a race. They remember it because it was a great race. Lots of things happened, okay? So, anyway. Piastri, Carlos Sainz. We were fast-tracking this part. Sainz, let's go for the first one. Piastri forcing Sainz off at turn 11. And Sainz obviously saying, they've got to give us it back and they won't get a penalty. I don't know what Sainz was saying. The clown weren't going to give you it back. And also
you never actually overtook him. You never actually overtook him. And the precedent was set from yesterday.
Yeah.
If K-Mag could drive back in dangerously, push Lewis off the road every single time, what makes you think they were going to change the rules on the Sunday? The precedent was set yesterday.
He was Spaniard. So yeah, I think we can both say, yeah, okay, Sites shouldn't have been forced off the track. He did have the right to a bit of space there, but obviously the door was opened by the FAA for Piastri to do that. Very similar to the K-Mag Lewis, but no penalty when there was one for K-Mag. K-Mag has actually got more penalties on his wall than trophies.
Mad.
Then we have
Oscar. Then we have
the worst decision, I think, of all. I actually think this was the worst decision of all because it actually affected Carlos's race in terms of position. And all he did was make a mistake. Now, a couple of laps before, they've allowed a Nico Rosberg Austria situation where you can force a driver off the track. Now, we all know what happened between Nico and Lewis back in 2005, I think it was, or 15 or 16, something like that, up at turn 2 on the last lap, where Nico decided, I turn in when I want into the corner. Carlos didn't even do that. He just lost the back end trying to make an overtake. So the FIA want to penalise bad incidents. I get it. But Liberty Media want racing. Now, if Liberty Media want racing, you cannot do things that are going to entice people not to take that risk. That's the whole point of a sprint race. The whole point of a sprint race is you don't need to take care of your tyres. You floor it and you get on with it. And you make mistakes and you make overtakes and you don't have to care about your car, even though we all know they obviously do care about the car because they've got qualifying an hour later. In terms of racing, in terms of Carlos Sainz's incident, he lost the back end. It made contact with Oscar Piastri, but going off the previous incident with Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri, Carlos could have driven Oscar to a white line and passed it if he wanted to, and he shouldn't have got a penalty as long as he gave Oscar room at the wall, which he would have done. It's not Carlos's fault that Oscar didn't drive off the track.
Like everyone else had done all weekend.
Everything else had done, yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden, because it's not a 90-degree corner and hard racing, and it's a hairpin where it's slow speed, it's not good racing, and Oscar should have avoided it. That's what the FAA have been saying all weekend.
And I just want to add as well, Carlos was very lucky given it was his tyre that hit the front wing.
Yeah.
If he'd ended up with a puncture, there'd have been no penalty. This is literally this is literally a cause and effect. I totally agree, by the way. This is the most racing incident thing all weekend. But this, if no one could tell me this isn't a cause and effect penalty, which is he's clipped the front wing, he's had to pay for whatever he could have driven, like he said, but they paid him and they've gone, right, we're gonna slap you with a 5 seconds when the standard of driving all weekend had been shoddy at best by some of these drivers. So the thing is, we've said multiple times on this channel, we're both bored of Liberty Media. We're both bored of the Liberty Media style, American style. It's all a show. It's all drive to survive style. And I'm glad. And to be honest, I applauded Max when he said 99% show, 1% sport. It is where it is. And you know, I feel very sorry for Carlos Sainz, to be perfectly honest, because it wasn't a penalty. It was not a penalty at all. That is as racing instant as it gets. But Carlos, you've learned your lesson for Imola. If you want to overtake someone, just push him into the gravel trap in Imola this weekend, because that's less of a penalty than trying to overtake. So just when you get to the Ravazzas, just push the car on the end.
Yeah, and we do have loads of runoffs without gravel as well at Imola, so you know you can do it there. But what we're going to do is FAA. Sort yourself out. This is worse than the offside rule. Sort it. Let the drivers know This is what you need to do, FAA. You need to let the drivers know what the line is for racing. This weekend, it was more blurred than my vision when my eye was shut. It doesn't... It was... How do I put this? The line of racing was clearer to Stevie Wonder than anyone else. And he couldn't see it. So let's just leave that there. We're actually going to run out of time, so we're going to quickly move on. Mercedes. We had a point earlier by Nick, which was also this one as well, which was Mercedes car is shambolic. It's quickly becoming worst car of the grid. It can't get much worse than the Alpine, so we're not going to quickly jump on that one.
You say that, but the Alpines were as quick as a straight line in the Mercs this weekend in the speed traps.
Yep, but Lewis doesn't leave Mercedes without a guarantee of a title. Otherwise, there's not much point in switching teams. I get it, but when the team of whether Newey's going to Ferrari or not, this was when the point was made. The thing for Lewis is he's not got a team that listens to him anymore, and that's the difference. They try and listen to George Russell, who doesn't have as much experience. So I think while that point is valid, go on.
And also doesn't seem to know which direction the car should be going in, because he wasn't doing all those test runs in 2022 with all those experimental strategies and stuff like that. That was all coming from Lewis's knowledge.
Yeah, so in general, we've already said about the Lewis incident in sprint race. We don't think it was his fault. In terms of George Russell, in the sprint race, he finished...
I believe he finished 8th.
12th in the end.
Oh, was it 12th? Was it 12th?
Yes, he was 12th. Yuki Tsunoda was 8th. It was a double points finish for RB.
Oh, right, never mind.
Yeah, he got stuck in the queue, in the DRS queue. So it's a really strange one there in terms of, because we look at Mercedes on with the medium tyre. Sprint qualifying 2 could not get the medium tyre to work like everybody else. Went out of sprint qualifying. But we then get to the end of the Grand Prix. Lewis is on the medium tyre. All of a sudden, he's one of the quickest drivers on the circuit. This is what we mean by the prima donna Mercedes. As much as we criticise George and Mercedes listening to George, both drivers, how can you know where to go with this car? You just can't. One minute it's the quickest car on the circuit, especially free practice 1. It's always really quick in free practice 1. I don't know why, but when they turn up at the circuit, it's like it's reached its pinnacle, then everybody else sticks a setup on their car. And then it just goes straight down the order.
I think a lot has to be said about Toto Wolff's management, Toto Wolff's leadership. The fact that they can't. I think the biggest thing is they can no longer throw money at problems. In the cost cap era, like before, they could throw any number, like best part of 400 million at problems. Now, when they end up in a design with a chassis and end up in a design tunnel, it's they can only make a certain amount of changes. Now, that being said, the amount of excuses Toto Wolff has come out with over the last 3 weeks is ridiculous. First, they went down the wrong concept with the 0 pods. Well, Red Bull have totally blown that out of the water with this year's car. Then it was the management changes haven't made much of it. There's nothing more than management. Mike Elliott ends up losing his job effectively. Now the simulator results aren't matching the results they're giving when they design the car. This is Mercedes. This is this isn't just a F1 manufacturer. This is a luxury car manufacturer with years and years and years and years and years and years of car experience. They have been an engine manufacturer for I can't even remember how long. The Toto Wolff's leadership of the team, along with Ineos, which speaks volumes about them leading a world championship car and now taking ownership of my Manchester United. So I'm really looking forward to this summer.
Hello, Crystal Palace fans.
Hello, yeah, hi guys. A lot has to be said. A lot has to be said about the structure, about the management, about, to be honest, a lot of blatant disrespect that's gone towards Lewis Hamilton as well as a driver with seven world titles. Yes, he won 5, but it was under his leadership, his car. There's a reason Valtteri Bottas could go nowhere near him. And let's be honest, Nico Rosberg's 2016 world title, if Lewis's engine doesn't blow up in Malaysia, you were talking about Nico Rosberg doesn't win that world title either. So, Mercedes fans, strap in for the long haul because it's going to be a long season. I think at this point you could easily say they may be the 5th or 6th best team on the grid, given how they show up on a race weekend. If the Alpine updates are work, and just quickly on this run, Toto Wolff needs to stop saying updates don't work. You can't jump. You can't. A car can't jump up with updates. It's different. Look at what the McLarens have done in a year. Look at what the Ferraris have done in 6 or 7. Look at what the Ferraris have done in a year. Toto, your poor management, your poor leadership, you allowing your top engineers to join every other team and not replacing them and wanting to be a marketing man and a businessman, coming out and giving all these stupid interviews about, oh yeah, if Jim Radcliffe takes ownership of Manchester United, I don't mind having a percentage. You being more business oriented and more marketing oriented rather than the team has now come up to bite you in the ass. So enjoy, guys. Enjoy Mercedes. It's going to be a long season.
Thanks, Nick. Not only that, moaning why Lewis is losing, this is the reason. Yeah, exactly. I mean, how can you have a really bad car, not get anywhere, and then expect your 7 times world champion to hang around? Before we natter on for another 2 hours or so, we're just going to quickly blitz through other weekend stories. We'll start with, let me just have a look. We'll start with Daniel Ricciardo and Red Bull. So RB, so AlphaTauri, so Minardi. We have
excuse me.
We're in a situation that 4th place in the sprint. Great drive by Daniel Ricciardo. 2 hours later, he's out in Q1. And I'll tell you something right now that I've noticed. If somebody who, like Daniel Ricciardo, further down the grid, does really well in the sprint, they normally don't do well in qualifying in this new format. I don't know why. It must be just a thing. Maybe they're not used to doing all the interviews, as Sergio Perez says. But Daniel is proved that he's still a top driver, I think. I'm trying to think where he come in the race. I do think the safety car killed his strategy quite a bit in the race. He come 15th in the race.
15th.
But he looked such a different driver on Friday and Saturday morning, and then back to himself, or back to where he's been. Yuki Tsunoda ended up a very quiet race, but ended up 7th. A great result by Yuki in the Grand Prix. 8th in the sprint as well. So a 7-point haul for Tsunoda. A points haul from the sprint for Daniel of 5. You know, I mean, that's 12 points to RB, who are already now on 19. So they doubled the points total over the weekend. They're now sitting 6th in the championship, ahead of Haas, ahead of Alpine, and ahead of Williams. And obviously at the bottom of the table is Sauber. They're not going to be catching Aston Martin, are they? They're kind of in no man's land now.
They are kind of in. It's the whole tier system, is that you've got the top 3 chasing chasing the championship when realistically it's only one team that's going to win the constructors. Let's be honest. Then you've got the mid pack fighting for, in football terms, the last spot in the Champions League / the European spot. Then you've got the relegation for the. If you look at Daniel's qualifying lap on the Saturday, is it Saturday? Yeah. He made two massive mistakes and if it wasn't for those two massive mistakes, he would have ended up in Q2 because he had the pace and Fernando would have got knocked out. It's a glimpse of the old Danny Rick, but he from Imola onwards in the European season, he now needs to categorically beat Yuki Tsunoda if he wants to be anywhere near that Red Bull seat, because it's all great having a great sprint race, but then it all got undone on the Sunday when it's the Sunday that matters. And I know you say his strategy was undone by the safety car. I mean, he was in 18th anyway. It's not like he was pulling up trees. It's not like he'd ended up from 20th to 12th. He was back there anyway. It was a Hail Mary sort of play. So yeah, it's a start. All I'm gonna say is it's a start point for Danny Rick. He now needs to beat Yuki. He now needs to beat Yuki comfortably because Yuki beat both Astons, which beating one Aston is a regular, but he beat Fernando and he was comfortably ahead of George after the safety car. George Russell wasn't getting anywhere near him. Like, he comfortably had the pace to keep George Russell behind him. George Russell was nowhere this weekend. In my opinion, that's a much better result than the 18 laps Danny Rick got for the fourth in the sprint. So yeah, good. It's overall very, very, very good weekend for RB. Let's see how RB, Visa, credit card, MasterCard, American Express, I don't know what the hell they call themselves. Let's see how it goes in Imola in 2 weeks' time, I believe.
Yeah. Other stories from this weekend. Haas still looking remarkably quick, especially in braking zones when you don't brake. But Nico Hülkenberg officially now signed with Audi for... I know everybody says he's going to Audi next year. He's not. He's going to Sauber. Then he will go to Audi. I think it's the best Audi could hope for in terms of a German driver. Unless you were going to entice Sebastian Vettel back, which I can't see happening for anybody. I think he's quite happy not racing.
Or Mick Schumacher.
Or Mick Schumacher, who Mercedes probably hanging on to, thinking we could, and also actually. Mick's been linked with Prema IndyCar projects for next year. So there's a chance that he might go there. Would he really want to go to Audi, where it's going to be touch and go whether it's actually going to work? Whereas Nico Hülkenberg's been offered a 2-year deal when 2 years ago he was sitting having a coffee, waiting for a phone call from Aston Martin to race in the Nürburgring Grand Prix. It's just... And Silverstone as well. He got called up for, didn't he? So, he did not think he had an F1 career after that. And now, like we said last week, he is a key point of the driver market that's gone. Audi and Sauber, realistically now, if they don't get sites, they still have a driver who can develop a very good car in Nico Hülkenberg. They have the experience.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. It does help when, as you say, your teammate is playing Destruction Derby behind you, so you can scamper off into.
I still think he would have finished 7th anyway. To be fair with that,
no, I think it would have been 8th. I do think Lewis would have got.
Oh, Lewis might have got him. Yeah.
I do think Lewis would have got him.
But then Lewis would have got his speeding penalty anyway.
Oh yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, see, he would have finished 7th. He would have finished where he was. I totally forgot about that. So the thing is, I think it's really interesting. He's got the 2-year contract because that also means he's got the 2026 Audi project as well. Yeah. So if that car is anything like it could be, imagine Nico Hulkenberg in the last year of his career ending up in a potential winning car.
Well,
And
I do have to hold my hands up on that one. I don't think Sauber is suddenly going to pop up with a winning car, shall we say?
No. So because it's 2 years. I mean, I'm talking about he'll have the 2026 Audi regulated car as well. And that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, I suppose it depends whether Audi do put a lot of into their first year kind of thing, because they're not actually involved. They are involved with Sauber, but how much can they affect 2025 design?
I think they will. I think they're going to look at it the Mercedes way. I think they're going to look at it the way Mercedes did. I know Mercedes are already in the sport, but I think they're going to look at it the same way. But no, good haul of points for Haas. Another good drive for Hulkenberg, and then as I saw that weird fact on every time Lewis has moved, Nico Hulkenberg's always ended up back at Sauber. So the cycle continues. And in terms of Carlos Sainz, because Toto has this weird fascination / fetish for Max wearing the Mercedes overalls in 2025, that's the only other conceivable seat that I believe Carlos can, if it's not the Sauber, then it's the Mercedes seat, given on how it plays out for Max, to be honest.
Yeah, I can pretty much agree with that. I mean, I'm just having a quick look, because obviously Audi are going to want a German driver. And the first German driver who is anywhere close to possibly getting to Formula One is Olli Gerfer back in Formula 3. And while he's very good, he's also signed with Red Bull. See, I can't see Audi suddenly picking him up and chucking him into a seat. So realistically, Nico Hulkenberg is kind of your best choice, and we know what he can do with a midfield car. He hasn't got that podium. I want him to get that monkey off his back. I think he'll be racing till he's about 60 till he gets that. He's also got the Porsche link with Andreas Seidel from winning Le Mans. So kind of Andreas Seidel does owe him one. And this maybe that being repaid right now. But yeah, Nico Hulkenberg.
I do also want to add, it's not like Nico Hulkenberg hasn't made massive mistakes when he's had the opportunity to get a podium.
Oh yeah, very true.
Sao Paulo, Hockenheim.
He had a great chance. But to be fair, everybody, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc both went off on that corner as well. So it's a very difficult one to call there.
It's the one in Sao Paulo that really sticks to my mind.
Yeah. We're going to just finish with one more driver, because we don't know if we're going to be able to talk about him again. Logan Sargent. I wouldn't say did a terrible job this weekend. He out-qualified Albon. Yes, Albon's time was chalked off for track limits. So officially hasn't actually out-qualified Albon, because he did in sprint qualifying, not in the race qualifying. But even in race qualifying, he was only 34 thousandths off Fernando Alonso, who went on to score points. He's always been sniffing just outside that getting through to Q2 situation. Yes, maybe a bit to blame with the K-Mag situation, but he was there battling. He wasn't like dropped off the back of the field. But the rumours are circulating of Kimi Antonelli and this super license put together. Personally, and I'll throw my opinion out there first, I'm not sure it's the right choice to drop him. Kimi obviously comes with this huge backing. Worryingly, I've just seen his date of birth of 25th of August 2006. Wow. That makes me feel old. He won Frecca, he won Italian and German F4. He's been very good in karting, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't hit the standard in F2.
He's not yet. I was gonna say he's not tearing up trees in F2 at the minute for all the hype that's sort of circulating around him.
He scored 12 points in Australia, which was his best result of the season so far. I think that does that equate to a podium? No, 12 is like fourth. I think
fourth is fourth, isn't it? Is
I'm going to double check it, but yeah,
because they run the same point structure in the feature races as they do in Formula One. So I think
yes, I'm just going to double check it now.
It's 25, 18, 15, 12 from top of my head.
There we go. See all results. Feature race results. Antonelli was fourth behind Zane Maloney, Paul Lauron, and for winner Isaac Hadjar.
Yeah. He's not really tearing up. Do I believe Logan Sarge is good enough to be in a Formula One car? Absolutely not. Do I believe he's in there because he's American and Williams want to hit the American market? Absolutely. But should he lose his seat to Kimi Antonelli, who's not done anything this season? No, he should be there till the end. Unless it becomes catastrophically bad, you got to give Sarge until the end of the season.
Yeah, I think for questions over his racing, I mean, you've got to remember he has scored a point, and I honestly thought he might score a point at some point this weekend. I think in the sprint he was 11th. I'm just going to double check that as well because I want to. If he ended up finishing 10th, in the sprint, only 5 seconds off Yuki Tsunoda, which is pretty good going, to be fair, for him.
But it doesn't translate. Sorry, but it doesn't translate. But it doesn't translate to a Sunday. Albon was up there in like 10th at one point trying to fight. Sargent again, 17th, 18th. I get what you're saying, right? But we're constantly lowering standards. Well, it's a good weekend for him.
Yeah.
You know, a la Nicholas Latifi and stuff. Oh, well, you know, he didn't bin it, or Maldonado. Oh, well, he didn't bin it in the wall this weekend, or he didn't crash into 3 cars this weekend. I get what you're saying, but it's not like he's a paid driver. No one's gonna tell me otherwise. He's not good enough for the seat. He's just there for Williams to hit the American market. Aside from that, he's not good enough. But should he lose his seat? Is it the fifth race? Are we fifth race in the season?
Makes me think now.
Bahrain,
1,
Jeddah,
2, 3, 4,
Australia,
5, 6.
China.
So Imola is 7. Yeah. British Grand Prix used to be round 7.
Yeah, but should he lose his race before a third of the season's gone? No.
No, I also look at the Williams Academy. Luke O'Sullivan is that driver who's next in line, really, and he's 11th in points, only about 10 points behind Antonelli, and he's also had 3 non-scores. So he's had the pace. He's just been unlucky. So why they wouldn't promote Zach O'Sullivan instead, I don't know. Oh yeah, I do. Mercedes engines. But anyway, we're getting towards the end of the podcast. It's ran a lot longer than we expected. But what do you expect from us? We always do it. I'm going to quickly throw it out to you, Wajid, your driver of the weekend.
Lando Norris.
I'm going to go slightly different, and dare I even say this, Yuki Tsunoda. I'll throw that out there as a choice. And also a shout out to Esteban Ocon scoring Alpine's first ever point of the season with a tractor. That tells you a lot, David Coulthard, who turned around and said it must have been flat out through turn 2 when it got overtook. Your flop of the weekend?
Red Bull, given the whole Adrian Newey fiasco.
I'm going to throw 2 at you. First one, Max Verstappen, you didn't score full points. But
he still came out with the most points this weekend.
Doesn't matter. He didn't. It was his mistake that caused the damage. And also, you don't kill Colin the Cone. You don't. Colin, hashtag Colin the Cone to anybody watching who shares this. But you do not kill Colin the Cone. I've picked too many of them over the years, and they have feelings. No, my main flop is the FIA. let us go to Imola and know how to race. If you give drivers an inch, they will take a mile. Learn from that. I mean, I'm going to put it this way. Max Mosley, Charlie Whiting, rest their soul and all that, but they would never have let this happen. Not in a million years. Because the rules were set. If you didn't like the rules, race elsewhere. But if you say to drivers, there's a white line, you can go up to it with your outside tyre, they will take a mile. If you say you can go up to it with your inside tyre, they normally behave themselves. So maybe have a think of that one, or stick a brick wall there. Wajid, thank you for joining us. As we said,
thank you for having me as always.
Gone on a little bit longer. We were planning 2 other podcasts, which we're probably going to skip just for now because I have things to do this afternoon. And actually, Christ alive, what time is it? So we're going to skip them ones for now. We will be doing them though. One will be of the 4-wheeled variety, and one will be of the wheeled variety, which is not quite 4, or maybe more than 4, depends how you build it. But hopefully that will bring a few new people into the podcast. And again, if you want to follow us on social media, Wajid's is there, Burnt Out Travels on Instagram.
Instagram, yeah.
And Twitter. Well, X. Twitter.
No. Just
Instagram now.
Just Instagram, yeah, just Instagram.
See, that should be the thumbnail. That should just be it. And then
I get confused there.
There's me.
Devs is there in the corner there.
Yeah. Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever. Facebook, we've got a page. We're probably now it's on it. We've got the YouTube channel, which you may be watching this on. If you are on the YouTube channel, you'll stay with us for a split second. If you're over on Twitch, where we also have this being filmed live, you're going to have a raid. So let's have a look quickly now. Who is online? Who can we go to? I think what we'll do, let's just make sure that nobody is online who's generally doing F1 podcasts. I don't think there is. So I'm going to give us a choice. We can go watch some iRacing, or shall we raid Formula One themselves? Because Formula One are now live with the esports.
Yeah, go raid Formula One.
They won't give a damn, but at least we can say we raided Formula One. Let's just have a look here. Let's make sure that goes through. Press that raid button. And I hope you will all go over there and behave yourselves, because they've got some decent racing going on. It's currently qualifying for the... Let me have a look. What is it? Qualifying for the Mexico City and Sao Paulo Grand Prix, which will be taking place later on today. But for now, it is the qualifying sessions, F1 Esports. And if you've got F1 23, the game yourself, obviously get better and you might be able to get in there yourself.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Hi, Beatster. You have just turned up just as we're about to raid out. We're going to go off to Formula One and watch the esports, but it's all going to be there on YouTube. Make sure you go get the views, because the last podcast did really well in the end. And we're going to be looking at doing some more in the near future. And Beatster, if you actually want to come on the podcast, feel free. I know it's stupid o'clock at time for you, but it'd be good to have your views on as well. Especially being a F1 23 game fan as well. But for now, Twitch, bye-bye, because you're going off to Formula One, and then we'll be ending the stream on YouTube. And for those on YouTube, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you very, very shortly. Goodbye.